Heart First leadership isn't what you say, it's how you show up, how you regulate, how you communicate, and how you execute when it matters most. We are Heidi and Ryan Sawyer, and you are listening to the Heart First Leadership Podcast.
Ryan Sawyer, your host here, and excited to get things going. I have my man, Andrew Dowler, here with me today. He is an incredible human who I met years ago back at Kokoro Yoga. So today, Andrew, he doesn't like it when I call him this, but it's because he's humble, but that is the truth. I believe this man is a master of practice. He is an exercise physiologist, an acupuncturist, a yogi, a Qigong teacher. He has a black belt in Tai Chi as well. And he is truly a master of the breath, a master of energy, a master teacher, incredible instructor. I'll be honest with you. I don't know anybody else who is committed to studying and being a practitioner. I have tried to live up to your expectations of what it looks like to be just a student of life, a student of this internal domain of practice and how to implement this into our lives. So thank you so much for being here, Drew. Super excited to have a conversation with you and expose you to my audience. So I'm excited.
Hey, man, it's an honor and it's a privilege to be here. So thank you for having me on.
So you guys might notice he has a bit of an accent. He's from Australia. Now, tell me what city in Australia you're from again?
I don't notice any accent. What are you talking about?
It's slight. I've been trying to correct it. You're going to be moving to the States one of these days, so you got to start.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to moving over to the States for a while.
Yeah,
it's part of the mission plan. So I'm in just south of Sydney, about 4 hours, in a town called Bateman's Bay. So kind of like South Coast, New South Wales. It's one of the most magical spots on planet Earth. It's one of the best, well-kept secrets around.
Well, now you just blasted it out there.
Yeah, God damn it.
That's okay. But I'll tell you what, we're going to get down to see you here one of these days. So I want to give you just real quick. I met Drew at Kokoro Yoga, like I just mentioned, which Kokoro Yoga is a yoga certification that's not currently offered anymore. It's a certification that Mark Devine and his daughter-in-law, Catherine Chapman, they co-wrote a book called Kokoro Yoga. Get it? It's incredible. And then they did a certification. I think there's only, 25 of us total? Something like that? Of certified Kokoro Yoga instructors. It's not very many, but they did a couple of years of this certification. And it's an incredible 2-week full immersion. We spent 10, 12 hours a day on the mat between practice, breath, meditation, asana flow, and then, unpacking the Yoga Sutras and then obviously some just limited like structure of movement and different things like that, where you came in talking about breath and everything else. But Drew was one of the instructors at the Kokoro Yoga instruction or the certification that I was at. So we spent 2 weeks together. And when you spend 2 weeks together on the mat side by side, like you forge an incredible bond that is unbreakable. And so that's where we originally met. Since then, we have just stayed in connection. And I have continuously learned every single time we're on a call or I have a question about breath, instantly I go to Drew, and has helped me form an awareness and a knowledge that is full encompassing the breath and not just from one angle or the other. And so thank you so much just for your mentorship to get us to this point, and excited to have you here. So Drew, before we dive into unpacking the breath today, we're just going to kind of start to unpack and see where the conversation goes. I have no idea what we're going to talk about exactly, but I know we're going to talk about the breath, which is one of our favorite conversations. Tell me what I believe that everybody has a story that led them down their own path of transformation that started their now current place of whether it be being a teacher, being a coach, being a mentor of sorts, being a thought leader, whatever it is. In your case, being a master of energy work and breath and Qigong. What sparked that path to get you to where you are right now?
Yeah. So probably the story kind of starts in the childhood. I always had an interest and a fascination and a kind of like a drive to join the military. So straight out of high school, I joined the Australian Army, went into the infantry corps there. And just through the process of training, developed bilateral stress fractures in both my tibias. So basically the bone starts to crack. And at the time I didn't really understand why that was happening. But now I know I have a good appreciation of why. It was just because of biomechanically my feet weren't really ideal for the type of training that we did in the infantry, whereas, you're carrying packs that are your body weight and doing lots of crazy physical training. So just structurally, my body wasn't designed for that type of training at the time. And so that manifested in my tibias, basically, both of them fracturing into what's called a stress fracture.
Yep.
To the point where
I've experienced it. It's not.
Yeah. No, every step is pain, right? And you can kind of like put up with so much pain, and the mental toughness piece is important, but then it gets to the point where it's just not practical.
Yep.
Because then you can't do the job that you're trained to do because you just can't keep
I actually
up.
played my whole entire senior year of high school football with stress fractures, and it was miserable. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun. Yeah. So anyway, so lifelong childhood dream to join the military, go on the training, getting really good at it, get this injury, and then get medical discharged, and kind of spat out the other end of that kind of process with no kind of backup, no support, no medical follow-up, just nothing. And I just went to a really kind of dark place. And instead of staying in that fitness kind of journey, because it's basically one of the fittest that you'll get when you go through military training, because they just do so much physical training, particularly for infantry. So I fell into a wrong bad circle of people, smoked a lot of drugs, ate all the wrong food, and just didn't look after myself at all. And then 12 months later, coming out of that downward spiral, I got spit out the other end with chronic fatigue syndrome. So point where I was just lying on the couch.
One more time, chronic fatigue syndrome, you said?
Yeah, chronic fatigue syndrome. So basically that's just where you have no energy during the day. You can't function. And at the moment, now I know that was all self-inflicted. It was just me not dealing with life back then because I didn't have any of the tools to understand what was going on.
How to store energy, how to build energy, how to
or how to process and then life stuff, like how to process when something doesn't work out. You have a goal for a life goal, and something out of your control changes that. So what do you do with that kind of information?
The mental and emotional aspect of being able
all that stuff. I had no training in that at all, so it was just basically a shit show. Excuse the French.
You're good.
So
that's the first time anybody's sworn on my podcast. So congratulations, you're the first.
E high five. Maybe editing can plop it out.
No, we're good. We're gonna leave it in. We don't edit on this podcast.
So this was about 25 years ago. So I was 18, 19 at the time. So I went through the kind of the current Western medical system then, trying to find a solution to why I was so unwell and had no energy, and went through various specialists, and they all basically had no idea and no kind of concept of what was going on, no solutions. And to the point, they were just essentially saying, "Oh, you're just kind of making it up. It's just in your head, right?" Because
I love hearing that when you're
yeah. But anyway, as part of my kind of interest in martial arts and kind of, I suppose, warrior culture was Chinese martial arts, particularly. So I grew up watching all those kind of old 1980s Shaolin Temple Kung Fu movies and stuff like that. So I always had an interest in that as well. And I'd done a lot of reading around energy, and my thinking was, I've got no energy, so what can I do to build my energy up? And I'm just starting to think about this while I'm lying on the couch, kind of just fatigued out. And then a flyer kind of came into the mailbox, and there was an advertisement for a Tai Chi class that was starting up in the local community hall.
I love that.
So I was like, oh, okay, cool. There's something going on there. So I kind of slept all day, and then just kind of saved up enough juice to turn up to this class. And I was just really lucky. The guy I was teaching it was a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. He was a Buddhist monk, and he'd been training Tai Chi and Kung Fu and Qigong since he was a little kid. So that real kind of classical traditional training. And now he was teaching. So I just happened to turn up to his first class in this town. It was his first time teaching there. And I wound up training with this guy for 8 years straight.
Whoa, wow.
And became what's called an internal student. So that's where basically it's kind of like an apprenticeship where a teacher will kind of take you under his wing, and basically you just train, eat, sleep, and train. That's all you do.
Wow.
And within 6 months, I basically fully recovered from my chronic fatigue syndrome, just following his guidance of just changing my diet, meditating daily Qigong and Tai Chi practice, and just bit by bit, I could just feel the energy kind of coming back.
So I'm going to pause you just for a second. I'm super curious. I've never heard this part of the story. So right. You've told me it, but you left part of those. You never went in that detail. How much time a day when you're in this full immersion with this guy and you're doing nothing but practicing?
Yeah.
Like, how much time were you spending, quote unquote, on the mat?
Well, it would depend on, in the early phases, just how much energy I had on the day.
Okay. As you built it up, as you started.
As it built up, basically it went from like 15 minutes a day, and then 20 minutes a day. Then you're doing a morning practice, and then an afternoon practice, and then you're doing a big morning practice, and then a larger afternoon practice. And then I'd go to the class and I'd co-teach. Like I'd be the dude up the front as who's demonstrating. So then Wilson, my teacher, could go around and then correct and individually coach, and I'd be the guy up the front going through all the forms. So you'd wind up doing 3 classes in a row, so 3 hours of training a couple times a week. And so it just build up.
So it's 6 to 8 hours a day. You're in this world of energy work, something like that.
Yeah. Towards the end, when Chi was getting really recovered. So when you go from being deficient to having abundant energy, then you can kind of really step into it. So the first process is building that energy back up and restoring your chi. Yeah. So there wasn't really a set period. It was just like when you can train, you train. And because at the time I was sick and I wasn't working, I had all the time. So the time wasn't a restraint in terms of I had to go to work or anything because I was not working at that period. So my kind of thing was just like, if I'm feeling good, I'll do something, whether that's just sit and do seated meditation or seated breathwork or seated Qigong. And then up into the standing Qigong postures, so just standing and breathing for an hour in pole stance, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Incredible discipline. I love it. I'm so intrigued. I always say I want to live that life of just practice someday. Like, I don't know. It intrigues me. So that led you into a place of being a practitioner, right? Which we're going to have other conversations about the importance of being a practitioner. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole today, but, or maybe we should, but that eventually it turned into you teaching, coaching, mentoring, and really wanting to master it, right? To a level where you're able to facilitate. What are you up to? How did that progress?
Yeah, so once I kind of got to that point where I had my chi back and I was kind of basically recovered, my goal kind of shifted to like I want to be able to share and teach this to other people because my experience is so shit in the Western medical system, it's so bad that I didn't want other people to have to go through that. And once you understand that it's actually it's not simple, but the practices are pretty basic. It's just that you got to know the right steps and the process to step through it. So that kind of guidance in the teaching. A lot of people overcomplicate a lot of the stuff. It's like actually a lot of it's not that complicated. It's just more about knowing the basic techniques and then doing the practices. So I thought my first injury was the broken legs, like the fractures in my shins. So I thought I'm going to go and study exercise rehabilitation because that was kind of like the pivot that started this journey for me. So then at the point I was like, I need to go to uni to get this degree in exercise science and rehab so I can understand this exercise and also the Qigong piece. Like I didn't understand why. I knew it worked because I had the experience of it worked, but I couldn't explain to anyone how it was working. So like, I want to teach it. I want to be able to explain what's actually going on. Yep. So to develop that confidence and the autonomy for people who I'm teaching. So then I went and did a fitness training course. So I became a personal trainer first. So within 12 months, I was, studying to be a personal trainer from being no energy to actually personal training folks. And then that was a bridging course to get into university. So I then did 4 years at university studying exercise science and rehabilitation. So that's to cover basically the physical and the physiological pieces of exercise in terms of how to use it for health and wellness and to rehabilitate people. So that was an awesome experience. I loved uni. I was like the nerd who would go to the library at lunchtime and get out more anatomy books and sit down and just study anatomy books. And I was also the nerd who, before an exam, would go and sit under a tree and do seated breathwork and meditation under a tree to prepare for an exam. And I remember like other students laughing at me at the time saying, "What are you doing? You're an idiot."
Yeah. And now I look back on that. You're the coolest person on earth. You know what I mean? Like, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. So I appreciate that. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that story? I thought that was important for
just the next step is like after training, doing that kind of like just continual Tai Chi training, a little bit of Kung Fu, but it was primarily Tai Chi and Qigong. I sustained a really serious back injury at one point, and then used Tai Chi and Qigong to recover the back injury, plus Pilates, which is another piece we can talk off down the track. And then getting acupuncture from my teacher for the back injury. And then kind of like lit another light globe in my mind. Like, this is a really important piece. So as soon as I finished the exercise physiology degree, went and did a master's in Chinese medicine to learn the Chinese medical piece. So kind of like, it was a really awesome time because it was like 8 years of just actual practicing with my teacher and teaching, and then 8 years of actually studying the science of the Western science and then also the traditional Eastern science as well.
We should all go through that type of training. I think that
was pretty special. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it seems so cool. Yeah, I wish I would have uncovered my love for this type of work at a much younger age. But it's all of our stories. I love to hear these stories because it's what we're doing now. It's like you wouldn't have been led to X, Y, and Z if you didn't have that experience of being in the military and having the stress fractures and then exercise physiology. And then, the back injury wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have gone into acupuncture. And it just shows you like how the things that are happening to us are for us. And like, this is a coaching mindset. Like, everything is a gift. Everything's our abundance. And as long as we derive the gift from it, it becomes our gift, right? It's when we start to, become the victim of the circumstance and we aren't able to see and derive the gifts from it. And so just love hearing these types of stories, obviously I relate to it incredibly. And that's why we, we do.
And it's part of the, like, in Chinese medicine, we talk about Taoism a lot. And as part of that natural cycle, the hurricane comes and creates chaos, but then there's a calm after the hurricane, right? And so there's a lesson that we can pull out of these bad moments and these experiences in our life. There's always a lesson in there. So if we can, at the time, it can be really, really disruptive and uncomfortable, but from that, there's opportunity for growth and development that comes out of that as well.
Yeah.
So we kind of like try to pull into that kind of that balance into what we're doing at all our levels.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's incredible. So what if we did this? What if we took a left turn and talked about building energy?
Yep.
As you were telling that story, I wrote down two different things: building energy and storing energy. So that eventually we could use it, right? And I think it'd be incredible just to hear, like, and again, without us going too far into like the science and the physiology of it, right? Let's just unpack somebody, because this is something that keeps people from moving the needle in their life, from taking on a different challenge they want, from whether it be starting a business or, really impacting their environment in a way that's transformative, or even just transforming themselves, like working on themselves. They just don't have the energy. Right? They get to the end of the day, they're tired. They get to the end of the week, there's nothing left. And they might get to the end of the weekend and go, all right, this week I'm doing it. And really the lacking factor is energy.
Correct.
Right. Everybody's telling us that, you got to get your thoughts in order. But if you have the energy to work on yourself, and I remember this vividly in my own experience of transformation, was when I got behind it and learned how to, and I had no idea what I know now, but at the time I knew enough to conserve energy, to use energy, to build it in a way that was like, hey, now I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this for good. Like, I'm going to direct it intentionally. The energy that I do have that's positive, I'm going to direct it towards a positive outcome. And so for you, talking to somebody who doesn't have any idea how to get started, to say, I have low energy and I want to build my energy to be able to step out, to transform, to work on myself, to grow, to evolve, to heal, to adapt, right? Like, where do I start?
We are all leaders. If you're ready to stop waiting and start impacting your environment in a powerful way, we want to connect with you. Click the Book Now link in the show notes to book a call with a Heart First coach and discover what Heart First leadership can look like in your life and in your environment. Now back to the show.
It's a good question. Where do you start? So, as a framework, there are 5 kind of key elements that I would look at as a framework. And generally, it's going to be in one of these 5 that there's a weak spot, or there's a link in the chain, or there's a roadblock, or there's something that you're doing that's kind of holding you up in terms of energy. So, so that's either going to be movement or lack of exercise, or the wrong type of exercise that suits your body or your constitution. Okay. Breathing. So you're not breathing correctly. Breathing is super important because that's one of the really, really big levers in how we produce energy in the cell. Because the better you can get oxygen to the cells and into the cell, the more energy you're going to make at the physiological level, at the cellular. We can talk about that too if you like. All right. So just getting good at understanding how to breathe correctly is super important for building up your energy. Next one is the mind state, which is probably the hardest one to train for some folks, is controlling kind of, so when we talk about state, we're talking about thoughts, feelings, emotions, and behaviors. All right. So these are the things that drive pretty much everything we're doing. So if that's kind of out of disarray, or you're out of alignment with those 4 key parts of your state, then it's going to probably lead you to behaviors that aren't going to serve you well. So understanding your own mind, something that you're amazing at and helping people do, is understanding how their own mind works, is like one of our massive levers. And it does take expert coaching, I believe, to help people unlock that.
Okay.
My coffee delivery. So
awesome. Hi, Liz.
Hi, Ryan.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll get her on another day, I reckon.
Yeah.
So and then the next piece is nutrition. Super important. That's the other big lever in terms of where we get energy from in the body.
Yep.
So nutrition is super important. And with nutrition also comes your ability to recover, sleep, manage stress. So managing those levers are really important.
Yep.
And then the 5th one is kind of the dual one. It's kind of cardiovascular fitness. So just having a really efficient cardiorespiratory system actually saves you energy. So if you can get fitter, your body becomes more efficient and saves you energy. Yep. Also in the Chinese medicine, the heart is where the Shen resides, and the Shen is referred to as your spirit or your morale. So if your spirit or your morale is low, then you just don't have that kind of inner drive to kind of go out and enjoy life. And that comes down to, having purpose, passion, and following your own values and principles. So being in line with those things. Yeah.
Where would you say that you notice a lot of people try to start there, right? They have this low, like you said, this kind of this low vibration. And it's by experience, it's some sort of almost apathy, kind of what's the point? And you just kind of go into the motions. And so people try to work with the mind. They try to, what's my passion? What's my purpose, right? But there's not the actual energy or the intuitive awareness, the connection to your body in a way that's actually going to be able to even uncover these things that people are looking for, that they think are going to transform their life. I did not plan this, but you just identified the integrated performance method, right? Nutrition, sleep hygiene, personal discovery, breath, movement. The whole gamut. You just said this is it, right? To get our energy back online. So then now for our brain, our body is operating at the ultimate level. And then you just step out into the world and do the thing because you got the energy, you got the passion, you got the focus, you got the clarity. So life becomes your playground because you take care of yourself from these different components. All right. So now I'm going to make you narrow it down. I don't know where we're going, people. I'm going to make you narrow it down to one thing that you want to talk about, or the most important. And we've talked to Mel already on the podcast about nutrition. So I might hold you off on that one. But movement, breath, mind state, cardiovascular system, you have to start with one. You have to start with one.
I would start with breath.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because breath is kind of the big lever to all the other pieces. And it's such a fundamental thing. We take around 22,000 breaths per day.
22,000?
Yeah, someone counted it. It wasn't me. So the average person, you're taking around 22,000 breaths per day. And the quality of your breath directly influences your nervous system. So that directly influences the mental state.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So your quality of breath directly influences the mind. The quality of the breath directly influences your energetic state, because oxygen is so important in creating the cellular energy. And the quality of the breath is really, really important for the quality of spinal mechanics and spinal movement. So if you're not breathing correctly, the movement piece doesn't work very well.
Right.
So if you can kind of breathe correctly, you're kind of addressing three of the other big levers at the same time. So in terms of like a stacked habit, if you will, or focusing on a really key principle, breath work becomes a really, really fundamental piece. And that's generally where I'll start with most people is because you're already doing it every day. It's an embodied experience. You can feel it. And then we can bring that awareness to how people are breathing and slowly kind of rebuild the breath, particularly if people have got a dysfunctional breathing pattern, depending on what's been happening in their life. And so then we can kind of focus on that. You can kind of practice pretty much anywhere. You don't require any equipment, any special tools. You can't go and buy out a special diaphragm from Amazon.com and plug it in, right?
Right.
So you've got all the tools in you already. Okay, it's just a matter of knowing how to do the things.
Yeah, no, I love that. So with the breath, let's unpack it. Like you talked about energy. So let's stay on that path. Okay, let's stay on this idea that how does the breath actually feed our energetic system? So because that's to me like this component that if I have energy, I'd do it. I'd get out of bed, right?
Yep.
And so what's that look like? Like,
cool.
You know, and there's so many different types of breath patterns and things that people are selling out there that are, you know, there's breath. I mean, breath is fairly popular right now, right? Way more than it was when we first started to study.
Yeah.
You know, and people are marketing that it's going to do all these incredible things. I'm a firm believer in the way I teach breath, and I wanted to understand it from all these different angles to make sure, like, hey, what's the moment by moment breath pattern? Like, what's the thing that we're going to actually use day in, day out, right? Because I think a lot of people think it's a breath as like, oh, I did that one time at that workshop over there, right? Mm-hmm. And it's some sort of an experience, kind of like, you know, Wim Hof breathing. It's more to me of an experience that you do, you know, with some cold exposure. But people are using it every day. And so, like, let's just talk about the energetic system. Let's talk about the breath. Let's just see where that takes us. And to understand it at a level that says, how am I going to use this to build up my energy system?
Yeah.
And if I have the knowledge of why this is working, maybe that's going to help somebody actually start that breath practice that leads into all kinds of different things, right?
Yeah, cool. I love this discussion. So you've probably heard me say before that Qigong is the master practice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's my personal opinion. So if we look at Qigong, the word Qi means energy in Chinese medicine. And Gong means just the dedicated study to or practice of something that's really hard to do. So Qigong is really just studying how to develop your own internal energy in your own body over a long period of time. So if you love coffee and you think you're a coffee expert and you've just been drinking coffee for 10 years and you know all the different flavors and tastes of coffee, you could be a Gong coffee drinker, right? You're an expert. Okay. So a Gong is just a kind of title that you can then apply to any range of expertise or dedicated practice in something. So when we're looking at energy in the body, the Chinese will call it Qi. And in the yoga traditions too, they call it prana as well. So they're talking about the same thing, this kind of energy that's in the body. When we look from like a Western physics perspective, what is energy? So energy in the human body is, we've got different forms of energy in the human body. So we've got chemical energy, we have mechanical energy, We have thermal energy, so kind of heat.
Mm.
We have electromagnetic radiation and electromagnetic fields, which create energy. We have electrical energy, so like our nerves conduct electrical impulses, kind of like a wire. You're plugging it into a socket. There's an electron stream that goes down the kind of the nerve. So we've got this electrical energy in the body. So we've got different types of energy from the Western physics perspective, which are all creating the global energy in the body. If we think like to the movie The Matrix, which is a really good example, like when Morpheus is holding up the battery and he's kind of saying that we are bioenergetic creatures and it's all built on energy. It's a really good analogy because we are bioelectrical organisms. So we have to have an electrical current in our body to create all these electrical processes in our systems. So if you have no electrical current or voltage or chi, your potential to create energy is decreased significantly. So
like,
from a kind of like
when you talk about potential to create energy, your potential to store energy, your potential to use energy, your
Correct.
potential just as a human being, your creativity, your focus, your concentration, your ability to heal, your ability to get stronger, all of these things is what we're talking about. You talk about potential, you talk about human potential.
Correct.
They're all energy potential. It's all going to come back to the energy system. Right.
Correct.
I'm really excited right now because I'm legitimately like taking notes, learning from you. Like this is part of my like vision for the podcast is to have these incredible mentors on, have a conversation like this, and then go down a rabbit hole that I'm not sure we've been down before. All right.
I'm not sure we've had this type of conversation yet. So it's kind of cool.
I mean, we probably have danced around it, but all right. Yeah. So energy potential. So keep talking.
So when you study how the electrical system works in the body, so bioelectrical systems, it all works on potential. So electrons will move on a gradient from states of high charge to low charge. So where you've got a high charge, the electrons will float in a string of potential to states of low charge. So that's how the energy moves through the body. It's just this potential gradient that shifts. And so what we're doing is we're managing and regulating the potential gradient in our body via all the different practices. So that's breathing exercises, particularly is an important one, and nutrition is an important one. So we're going to focus on breathing today. So when we're creating energy in the body, let's look at chemical energy. So the energy kind of currency in the body, which fuels all kind of like muscle contraction, for example, is mitochondria. So mitochondria are specialized kind of organelles that live in the cell, and they live in all cells. Okay. So what happens is that the mitochondria, to make energy, they need three things to make energy in the cell. So they need oxygen, they need a fuel source, and the fuel source is either going to be glucose or a carbohydrate fuel source, or it's going to be a lipid or a fat fuel source. Okay. So that's where the nutrition piece comes in. If you're eating crap, you're not going to have good fuel sources at the cellular level. And the third thing, which gets overlooked all the time, is an electrical current or a voltage. So if you've got no voltage, if you're not delivering an electrical current to the tissues, to the cells, okay, then they literally don't have the charge to spin up the chemical kind of machinery that's in the cell that does the complex kind of chemical reactions that it needs to do. So we need three things. We need oxygen, so that's breathing. Okay, we need good food, so that's nutrition. And then we need an electrical charge or voltage getting delivered to the specific organs or tissues or cells in the body. Okay. All right. So they're the three key ingredients. So when we're looking at breathing, if we just look at the breathing piece first, so we have at the cell a three-step process to create chemical energy in the cell. So we've got glycolysis. So that's step one. So that's when you're not delivering oxygen to the tissue or to the cell. It's an anaerobic process. And so when you get one glucose come into the cell, it makes two energy molecules called adenosine triphosphate. So you get a 1 for 2. So you can still operate and you can still exist anaerobically, but it's very, very inefficient.
Yeah.
Most people who are struggling with energy are most likely probably stuck in glycolysis or in an anaerobic state. So if you've done like any exercise you've done, like a HIIT session, a high intensity interval training, and you do all that lactic acid burn and you get fatigued really quickly. It's kind of like that, but all day. Because the cells are just kind of burning through their fuel source really quickly, because it's got a high rate of uptake, but it also has a kind of high burn rate, if you will.
Yeah.
So then people will be craving sugary foods to kind of keep that fuel source supply.
Got to feed the animal. Yeah.
To feed the animal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The next two steps, what's called the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain, all right? And this is a two-step chemical process where at the end of the two steps, you get one glucose molecule comes in, and then you get 38 ATP come out.
Okay, so that's a much better ratio.
That's a much better ratio if it's glucose. Okay. If it's fat that goes into that kind of two-step process, it's one molecule of fat or a lipid, and you get about 108 ATP come out of that. So fat's a much more efficient energy source for creating chemical energy in the body. Right. That chemical energy that comes out the other end, the adenosine triphosphate, there's a process that happens there where the molecules get broken off at the end, and that breaking off of the molecule creates an energetic burst, and that's the energy that's created for the cell to do its mechanical job, whatever that job is. So creating a muscle contraction or starting to grow a new protein strand or whatever it is that actual cell needs to do, it needs that chemical energy as the spark to do that thing.
Got it. So I want to pause you just for a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So, a lot of times in the yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi is viewed in the Western world as kind of a little bit woo-woo, right? A little bit kind of like, and we hear about energy work. We hear about, this ability to cultivate and store energy, to be able to, do these practices to build energy. And it doesn't seem real, right? Because you can't see it, right? It's not tangible. It's an experiential thing. So you have to learn, you have to actually experience it. You have to actually practice it and experience it. And the reason why I'm loving this conversation, it might be a bit much for some people, but if you can just grasp the fact that we're able to break down our energy system all the way down to these micro little parts of it to understand, like, this is real, this is happening. And this is why something like breathwork is so incredibly important, is because like energy, you can make your body more efficient and create energy in quite simplistic ways. And with that energy, you can change your life.
Absolutely. So there's this kind of concept I like to kind of refer to called simple complexity. So like the mechanisms that we just described, if you were to write out the chemical equations of those energy making cellular actions, like you're going to like take up 3 or 4 pages of an A4 book just writing out the chemical equations. Like, it's pretty complex what's going on, but you don't need to know the chemical equation. All right. All you really need to understand is just appreciate that the way you breathe will affect the different kind of levers of energy production at the cell. So if you're breathing crap, you're only making 2 energy molecules per 1 glucose molecule. It's pretty ordinary. If you're breathing really well, you're getting 100 ATP. So what's the return on investment in that?
Right.
2 to 100.
Well, let's talk about real quick. What do you think is the number of people who breathe efficiently? Give me a percentage. What do you think it is? I mean, I've heard percentages. We've talked about percentages, but
I honestly don't know. I've looked at the literature on that, but I would say a lot of people, because there's so many stressed people at the moment in the world. So if you're living in a slightly chronic stress state, you're probably hyperventilating. You're not even knowing you're doing it. So
you're overbreathing.
You're overbreathing. So over half.
Easy.
Easy.
Over half. Have a dysfunctional breathing pattern, which then destroys their ability to store energy. It makes their mind potentially busier and more anxious, and which then does this feedback loop of the worse my breath gets, the more irregular, the choppier, the more I overbreathe, then the worse these things come, and my body stays in a place of being a chronic place of being stressed. But stress is what we're talking about, is the nervous system. The nervous system is just switched on. And I guess on a scale, I tell people on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Because you're never just one or the other. You're not just sympathetic or parasympathetic, but you're somewhere, moving around that scale. But let's say it's one is being parasympathetic, lethargic, completely rest and recoup. 10 is completely switched on, sympathetic and overstimulated. And people are probably walking around. And 5 is like, right down the middle, right? So just living at a 7, living at an 8, right? Which if I could go back and look at my life a decade ago, I was probably a 7.5. I woke up at a 7 or an 8. I mean, pots and pans banging, really busy head, and anxious, and something as simple as a daily breath practice of learning how to breathe properly, of someone teaching you who knows how to actually teach you the mechanics of the breath so you can train your body how to breathe with a proper breathing pattern. And you can eradicate a ton of things. You can quiet your mind. You can really open the door to all kinds of potential.
Yeah, like in Qigong practice, a lot of the different sets, there's a saying, it goes, you do this regular practice for a certain amount of time, it cures 1,000 ills, right? So the kind of concept there is, instead of trying to get really specific about trying to fix all these other little problems, well, that could be big problems for you, but the core root of the problem is really coming from the same place. So if you just address the root, and then often a lot of the other problems will just kind of resolve on their own, because you're coming back to the fundamentals of how the body operates. Appropriate kind of balanced state, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
So where do we start?
So where you start, you teach somebody how to breathe correctly, right? Okay. So how do you teach them how to breathe correctly? So before we think about getting the stuff to the tissues, we need to teach them the mechanical action of breathing. And so we really have 2 primary breathing muscles. So that's the diaphragm and the intercostals. So they're paired together. So when you take an inhale, the diaphragm contracts and the intercostals contract. And basically the diaphragm and the intercostals, when they contract together, create a bigger thoracic space. So it increases the space in your ribs. Okay. Why is that important? So when you increase the space in the rib cage, the lungs sit in within the ribs. So the pressure gradient happens of gas exchange or air exchange. So air from the external environment goes from a state of high pressure to low pressure. It's called Dalton's law of gas. So when you expand the rib cage and you create more space, okay, the pressure gradient changes and it draws air into the lungs.
Got it.
So the first thing we want to teach people to do is just how to create more space in their basically their rib cage. Okay, and the way to do that, there's different techniques, but essentially we want to bring this awareness to firstly how they're breathing and where they're breathing. So most folks will tend to breathe more kind of in their upper body, in their neck and their scalenes and their chest a little bit. And they may not be accessing that big, powerful diaphragm muscle. So we want to just bring awareness to how they're actually starting to breathe, and then kind of teach them where their diaphragm is located in the body, and the actual feeling of when the diaphragm contracts and it domes downward, it creates that rib spread, which gives you that feeling of getting larger, increasing that rib space.
I like to use the word sensations, because sometimes feelings, people get that with oh, I'm feeling sad. No, feelings are the actual internal experience of your rib cage expanding, of diaphragm engaging, right? So this is a sensational vibration happening inside our body that we can feel, that we can experience. Experience.
So the lung and the ribs have all got sensory nerves, sensations. So to your point, sensory nerves that feed back to the central nervous system, the brain, about what's going on. So you are actually experiencing that sensation. So that's a good kind of point. So once you can kind of teach someone how to kind of feel the breath a bit better, okay, and then the real kind of key is then to kind of then teach them how to really get the diaphragm doming down properly, because if you're breathing shallow, you're kind of more into the upper lungs. But when you start to really tap in the diaphragm, you can draw air down into the lower lobes of the lungs, so you can get more air into the system. So the first big lever is, can you get more air into the system? All right. So more air gives you more potential to get oxygen into the bloodstream, which is the next step.
Yeah.
The second piece is once you've kind of taught people the inhale piece, then they need to understand how to exhale correctly. Because if you inhale and you don't really exhale properly, you're not leaving space for you to fill the air up more, the lungs up with more air. So you need to be able to teach the exhale. And the exhale is a reverse movement. It's where the ribs come back down together and the diaphragm domes back up. There's a slight flexion of the spine. Okay. And then that action increases the pressure in the lungs. The atmospheric pressure becomes greater than the external environment and the air just moves out. Yeah. So you're not actually forcing it out. You're just changing the pressure and the air moves out on its own.
Let me ask you a question. In my personal practice, I have found that even when I started and when I maybe lose my mechanics a little bit, because if I don't work on my mechanics, they get worse. Right? Yep. It's like anything. If you don't use it, you lose it. I find it beneficial to start with mastering the exhale. So when I'm doing like an exhale, we call krama breathing or whatever, I like to engage those muscles, kind of warm them up by really focusing on the exhale first. And then my inhale becomes just kind of natural. So would that be okay to teach? Because I actually teach it that way too. So I'm actually asking you as a mentor, like to teach the exhale first and master the exhale first, and then engage with the inhale.
It's a good question. What comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, right.
In
life, the first breath, I guess, would be in.
But so honestly, it doesn't really matter as long as you address both of them equally. Yeah. And when you're coaching someone, that you're trying to create a quality of both, because you can't have one without the other. So if someone's connecting more to the exhale first, kind of pulling that thread. If someone's connecting more to the inhale, pulling that thread. And then coaching is often like you watching somebody doing the thing, and then you're pulling out the external kind of cues that you need, and then coaching on those cues. So if you just go in for like a very set, this is how it's done kind of approach, that can backfire, because you might come across someone who's got a bit of a unique pattern. If you're trying to force them into the exhale and they're a bit stuck in extension, they can't, so there's that kind of.
That's a lot of specifics there. So I have a question for you. All this different breath courses that we have engaged in and took, and certifications and oxygen advantage and this and that and the other, and you pull up a Wim Hof course, and what no one's really teaching the mechanics of the breath to the level that you have taught me, or that I've learned from you, or that now we teach.
Yeah.
So what is the thing that we should be cautioned about? Like all of a sudden we go from someone who has never really dove into a breath practice to doing a breath practice of sorts, like, even like, warrior type breathing, like, aggressive inhale and exhales that moves a lot of energy. It stimulates the nervous system and does those things. But if I'm doing that without really understanding or being in connection with my mechanics, like what's the repercussions of that? Because this is something really, really important to me. As I learned all these different things about the breath, I was like, I'm not teaching anything else until we teach the mechanics. Until we get that online, aren't we just potentially taking a dysfunctional breathing pattern and making it worse?
Yeah, you can create dysfunctional breathing patterns, and you can feed into a whole range of biomechanical problems as well. So you can kind of create injuries or create mechanical issues in the body if you're doing the breathing exercises incorrectly or not fully. So then the reason behind that is because the actual mechanics of respiration is closely tied to the mechanics of spinal movement, so how your spine moves, which is it's intrinsically tied to gait or walking. So if you develop a bad breathing habit, your spine's not going to move very well, and you're not going to walk very well, because
that's going to cause knee problems and hip problems and ankle problems and whatever else, and probably back issues, lower back issues.
Generally, when I'm doing a lot of back rehab, because I've done a lot of back rehabilitation, it's been my observation that pretty much anyone who's had a chronic lower back problem has a really poor breathing mechanics.
So you start with working with a back problem by working with breath mechanics, and that helps to alleviate back pain.
Yeah, because the link in there is like when you look at the structural anatomy of the diaphragm, which is that's the primary respiratory muscle, the breathing muscle. Structurally, it attaches onto the thoracic vertebrae, 10, 11, 12, and lumbar vertebrae 1, 2, and then fascial attachments right down from lumbar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, S1 to the psoas muscle. So it might sound like a lot of kind of anatomy jargon, but essentially what that means is your diaphragm is structurally connected to your lumbar spine. So when you breathe, you're putting a torsion or a torque onto your lumbar spine. Right. Okay. And so if that mechanic, that kind of synergy is not working well together, then the diaphragm, because it's attached to the spine, can become a primary lumbar stabilizer. So it can take over the roles of like your transverse abdominis and your abdominals, which are meant to be stabilizing the spine. And that's a problem because then the diaphragm is kind of stuck in a position where it can't access its full range properly. And so breathing mechanics then gets decreased. Yeah. So it kind of goes up and down the kind of spinal column. So to address one, you have to address the other.
Yeah.
And if anyone has had if you talk to any body worker or a manual therapist, the link between those powerful flexor muscles and psoas is really, really strong. That relationship between that and lower back pain is really, really quite strong. So they're very closely tied together. So if you're doing all these breathing exercises correctly, you can just kind of like feed into these other problems down the track.
Yeah. So it just reaffirms to me like how functional like doing a breath practice is. It's like somebody who wants to work out or, do a little bit of yoga or, doing some sit-ups or whatever it is. Like,
yeah,
this is so fundamental. But again, the reason why I love having this conversation with you, Drew, is I'm trying to illuminate to people. Just the other day, I had a conversation with somebody about a breath and meditation course that I'm going to be offering starting in like mid-July. Yeah. And they go, what kind of breath work is it? I'm like, well, I couldn't really explain to you. It's moment by moment. It's mechanics. It's cadence, right? It's a little bit of CO2 tolerance. We're going to talk about how to breathe light to breathe right, So there's this, we're hearing two different things. It's like, wait a minute. We said that we were over breathing, but then you're telling me to take a bigger breath. Well, which one is it? Right. And so there's just so many things to unpack and understand when it comes to how that impacts our system and how that impacts our nervous system, our state, our physiology, and all these different components. Because they're asking me a question about what kind of breath work is it? Is it Wim Hof? Exactly. And I've said that a couple of times in this podcast already, but that seems to be the most popular thing being sold out there right now. Right. And that's what they asked me. And I'm like, no, I mean, and I personally don't teach that type of technique until it's more of an experiential thing. Like what I want is to people to bring online a daily practice is going to help them, number one, breathe mechanically. So the things that don't have to be there as problems are just 80% of, the clutter is just gone. Like physically we feel better. We're moving better. If my breath all day long is better, at the end of the day, I'm going to have more energy. It's just that simple. Right. And so when it comes time to make the decision whether I make a salad or I order a pizza, I have the energy to make the salad. Right? Exactly. I'm conscious. I'm online because my breathing's been good all day long. Like that is the most transformative piece that people like. That's a breath practice to me personally. And then the ability to like shift your state. You need to wake up. You need to calm down. You need to direct your focus or concentration, and we can go down all kinds of right. And then to understand, the higher my CO2 tolerance is, the better the delivery of oxygen is to my tissues, and having that whole conversation. So let's unpack this just for one more minute because we can spend hours, and this is endless, right? So, okay, so we understand we need to learn how to breathe mechanically, and we need to find someone to help us with that because we don't know how, right? Potentially, right? And so, but help me understand a little bit more about this idea. Like we said that everybody's over breathing, but now you're telling us to take a bigger breath. So how does that work? Like, so which one is it? Am I over breathing, or should I take a bigger breath, or should I breathe light, or like what
yeah. So the typical person who's over breathing is breathing around about 24 breaths per minute.
Okay. Yeah. So I've heard like 16 to 20. So
yeah, it's in that range.
Anywhere in that range. Yeah.
With the simple breathing practice, Ryan, you or I could teach someone how to slow their breathing rate down to 5 breaths a minute easy.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
So, yeah, 5.5 is my goal. 5.5 breaths per minute. That's what we're shooting.
There's a magic number around that 5.5.
Yeah.
So you think about then the kind of more you breathe doesn't necessarily equate to the better breath. So if we're talking about efficiency of breathing, so it's not just about how much air you can get into the lungs. It's like what you do with that air and that oxygen and that mix. And you mentioned carbon dioxide tolerance and some other pieces of the equation that we need to address at some point. So the first step is to slow your breathing down and breathe efficiently, and whatever that looks like for you. All right. So if you can slow that down from 24 breaths to 12 breaths a minute, cut it in half, that's going to be a big change in terms of how your nervous system's responding. If you address the mechanical piece, you're going to start to bring online some of the abdominal muscles, which have probably been a little bit asleep and not being kind of utilized to their proper function. You're going to start to take out tension out of your scalenes, out of your neck, out of your upper thoracic. So headaches might disappear. Tension in your neck.
So you're having headaches. You got those, right behind your shoulder blades. You're holding a ton of stress. Like people, that's breathing muscles, right? Like my traps. Like these muscles are being used to help me breathe. They're what's the right word I'm looking for, Drew? They're not secondary, but
they're accessory breathing muscles.
Thank you. They're accessory breathing muscles, but if I'm breathing 20 times a minute, I'm breathing up in my chest. Like I'm using the majority of the breathing muscles I'm using are my accessories rather than the primary and secondary breathing muscles. Right. And so that's, if I'm somebody who's just got a ton of tension in my neck, headaches, shoulder blades have knots in them from stress. That's where I hold my stress. Is it? Or do you need to learn how to, enjoy and exhale? Yeah.
So that whole piece is really interesting too, because those muscles, so any muscle has an attachment on the rib cage can become a breathing muscle. It can help change the shape of the ribs. So any basically muscles, so your traps, your rhomboid, like anything that attaches onto the shoulder blades, because the shoulder blades have an effect on the ribs. They can all come into that pattern. So, but their jobs, that's not their primary job. The primary job is to either move the arm or to rotate, move the head, not to actually primarily do the breathing for you. So you're taking all the load off these accessory muscles so they can actually focus on the actual proper job they're meant to be doing, and allow the diaphragm and the intercostals to do most of the work for you. So you're just kind of like changing the load a little bit around.
So we slow our breath down. We learn how to mechanically breathe. We were able to relieve some natural stress that lives in our, neck and shoulders.
Yeah.
We slow our breath down to, now we have a cadence of a goal eventually of a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, somewhere around there. That's 6 breaths per minute. If I were to inhale for 5, exhale for 5, right? That's 6 breaths per minute. We want to be just a little bit under that. Ideally, everybody's a little bit different. So to breathe with mechanics and breathe with cadence, like if we were wanting to really take control of this energy system, to bring our conversation back full circle and to kind of wrap up this conversation with a bow for now, because we're going to continue it. That's the place to start, like breathing mechanics and cadence, right? And
then we get the movement piece first. Yeah. So for example, in yoga practice, asana becomes before pranayama for a reason, all right? So asana is the physical movement practice in yoga practice.
The stretchy bendy thing. Yeah.
The stretchy bendy, as you know. And then pranayama comes next. So you don't teach pranayama first until someone has got a good movement practice. Right? Because if you introduce pranayama before they understand their movement body, and they won't be able to settle into the subtleties of the breath breathing exercises that we do in pranayama practice.
So if I'm building my morning routine, I should do a little bit of asana flow before I sit down and work on my breath mechanics.
Particularly if you're a beginner, if you're starting out, if you're like, this is your entry point. That's the traditional kind of approach, the classical approach as well.
We're going to be careful here because we could go again rabbit hole for days, but So tell me, Drew, again, just what is it that you have going on? I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation. And I mean, anybody can see why I continue to come back to Drew to learn more. And I'm never, ever going to know the breath, the energy system, the way that Drew does. Like, that's not my goal. It's not my goal at all. I have Drew. I don't need to. I don't need to know. I just
got Drew in your back pocket. You're good to go.
Yeah, man, I'm good to go. As long as I know it well enough to have a practice. And here's the thing that works for me, and it might work for you if you're listening, is with just some knowledge, it gives you like, I get it. Right. Sometimes it takes some science. It takes this understanding the mechanics of it to go like, there's something else going on here. It's deeper than just having a breath practice. Right. And people think that the breath is some sort of experience, but truly it's a foundational component to your health, to your energy system, to be able to then, ask yourself what's next. Right. Because you have the energy for it. Right. So let's put a bow on it. Is there anything that you wanted to say or to kind of to wrap this conversation up as a way to wrap this piece up? And then I want to hear from you, like what's new, what's next for you?
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I think it's just we're in an exciting time of period in history because we're like I'd call a second renaissance. We're kind of moving into a different level of understanding of how this human organism operates. So like from an operating system perspective, and what I mean by that is understanding the neurophysiology, the neurochemistry of how the body works. So we're getting a bit more understanding. And what's super interesting to me is as the latest kind of research is coming out, it's really just reinforcing all these very old practices that have been around. Like pranayama has been around for the version that I practice is 1,800 years kind of old. Right, the Krishnamacharya kind of lineage of yoga breathing, and that goes back another 6,000 years before that as well.
Yeah.
So, and humans haven't evolved that quickly in 6,000 years, right? But our modern environment has changed dramatically,
right,
in the last 50 years. All right, okay. Everything from like EMS that are around like that. What's that doing to our electrical system? We don't really know, so we're in a very different kind of world.
Even the amount of information that we're exposed to on a daily basis, the amount of social terrains we have to cross. I mean, all these things is why I believe like this type of work that we're doing is not just important, it's necessary.
I mean, we have a tsunami of chronic health problems in the developed world, which is mind-blowing considering we're, the Western developed world should have the highest health rate based on our medical system. If it's any good,
especially with the information that we have now currently.
But clearly something's not kind of clicking, right? And that, that's another big discussion we can have. We'll put that one to the side.
We're talking about being a practitioner. It's one of our next.
Yeah. So it's really exciting. So we've got a lot of this kind of understanding of mechanism and why things are working. That's, in my opinion, half of the piece. The other piece is the kind of the art of it. It's like the practice is get the techniques, you get the kind of the skills and the drills and the asana and the whatever it is. And then it's just doing the thing and making the subtle little changes and adaptations for you.
Yeah.
So, initially you might need a coach or a teacher or a mentor, but then after a while you become your own teacher, coach, mentor.
Well. But I think we all should have somebody that we're able to go to, right? I mean,
100%,
mentorship is how we're built as humans, like to be reaching down and to be reaching up at the same time, saying, hey, who can I learn from? Right. And then how can I then turn around and teach that to somebody? Because when I have to turn around and teach it, then I'm mastering it to a certain degree. Right. And this is something where I believe, we all should have a coach, teacher, mentor, in whatever 100%. Element of human potential or the human experience that you want to, govern, get better at, explore, strengthen, what I mean?
Personally, I have, 2 or 3 coaches at the moment, mentors in different fields that I'm working with. So you're always, we're learning machines, but there's always something more to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Never ends.
Yeah.
Never ends. I have the same. I have multiple mentors and coaches that I work with, from neuropsychologists and working with you and, biblical scholar. And I mean, always studying something different to try to connect more dots and make it more of a whole, complete experience. Yeah. So what's new with you, man? I want to hear you're always working on something different. Every time I talk to you, you're in like a different certification of sorts, or going back to school, or you're teaching yoga somewhere, or you're always doing something. So what's new? What's up front for you?
I've always got something on the go. So in terms of like personal study, I'm newly completed like a yoga therapy course. So that's learning basically how to use all the tools of yoga in a therapy setting. So to help people with health conditions, rehabilitation. So to me, that's super interesting. So, I've got the Chinese medicine piece, I've got the Western medicine piece, and now I'm learning the kind of the traditional yoga approach to health and wellness. And so that's really super fascinating for me. Although my Sanskrit is horrible. So
I'm not going down that road either.
Maybe if Catherine's listening, she can help me out.
Yeah.
Continuing the learning and the studying journey, and it's been great to kind of like meet other yogis on the path as well. You're on the healing path, so that's fantastic. And emptying your cup once again, and then being an open vessel and learn more things, which is awesome. And then professionally, so I run my own private practice in Bateman's Bay. So if you're located in Australia, New South Wales, if you want to come down and say g'day, you can find me in Bateman's Bay for face-to-face sessions, but I also offer telehealth as well. So I've got clients around the world at the moment doing different stuff. And all my info, if you're interested, is just at my website. So you can kind of go over there and find all our details over there.
Which is what? And we'll share it in the show notes. But
it's andrewdowler.com.
andrewdowler.com. All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you have a whole library. I mean, if someone likes to geek out, if someone wants to geek out, like, this is your guy to geek out. If you like the ins and the outs and the science and all the way down to the micro levels of what's really happening, all these different processes of the body, like Andrew is your guy. So, and he loves teaching it. An incredible teacher. I've learned so much from you. Thank you so much, Drew. We will have you on again, and we will continue this conversation about energy, about breath, about movement, and just about human potential, and how to just tap it one little piece at a time, how to just continue our practice in such a way that we continue to build our experience, right? This experience of being able to connect with ourselves at a whole different level. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time and your just desire to constantly learn. So I know that you're going to stay one step ahead of me, and I appreciate that. I'm going to push you though. I'm going to push you just a little bit. Looking
forward to it. Thanks so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Remember, leaders go first. Alignment matters, and the environment that you create is the legacy you'll leave. We'll see you on the next episode.